Hi, YouTube writers. So, have you ever wondered where ideas come from? Where does creativity come from? This is something that I ask myself that all the time. If you've ever struggled to get an idea, or maybe you have too many ideas, you might have asked yourself the same thing. So today I'm going to talk about that. What is the source of creativity? Where do the ideas come from?
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. For Just Media, I am Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author, and I'm here on Fridays to give you some writing tips or just talk about writing and to share some of the things that I think about and things that might be important to you as well. So where do ideas come from? What's the source of the ideas? So I've read a lot of books. I've heard people say that, well, it comes from God, it comes from the muse, and we basically transcribe what these spirits are sending to us. I don't discount that. That could be exactly where creativity comes from, where ideas come from. But I want to talk about maybe a different idea. It does sometimes feel like a mystical experience, right? Because they seem to come out of nowhere, right? You could be just at the grocery store buying some eggs, and all of a sudden you think, oh, I'm going to write a story about a dinosaur. Where did that come from? Maybe the eggs, the dinosaurs, or a connection there. Or you might be at the dentist, right? And then think about writing this evil story about an evil dentist. And that might make sense because they can be scary, right? So uh, a lot of times there might be some kind of connection, right? Something strikes a memory, but then sometimes it seems like you don't really know where the idea came from. You weren't doing anything different. Nothing else was going on, and yet there's an idea that comes up. Hey, I should write a story about this. And so, how does that happen? Where does that come from? And we may feel that, well, it comes from us, right? It comes from our experiences, or it comes from something that we are creating. Rick Rubin it states in his book, The Creative Act, that content does not come from inside of us at all. He states, to quote, the source is out there. He says we either sense it, remember it, or tune into it, not only through our experiences. It may also be dreams, intuition, subliminal fragments, or other ways still unknown by which the outside finds its way inside. So what he's saying is, well, no, we didn't think of it ourselves, right? We didn't create it ourselves. We weren't just buying eggs and thought of writing a dinosaur, that it came from that outside. It actually came from other things that you saw. An egg reminded you of a dinosaur, right? So everything on the outside is making its way inside. It's maybe not immediately, like he says, could be through a dream. So something affected you, your subconscious, and it made its way into a dream, which then you pulled out and said, oh, I could write a story about this. Or other things, right? History or something else in your past that has made its has sort of filtered through into the present, so that you can now write about it. Maybe when it first happened, it didn't strike anything. It didn't make you think of anything. But now, years later, you're able to kind of distill what happened and create a story out of it. So if you think about it, one of the things that all of our stories have in common is us, right? We bring ourselves to the story. There's a piece of yourself in every story. So there are events that you've experienced, there's emotions that you've felt. All of these are making their way into your story. So it's kind of weird, because to me, I think of it as being inside me, right? So he's saying, no, it's things on the outside. Well, yeah, it had to have started on the outside to have made its way into the inside. So in a way, I agree with him, and in a way, I don't agree with him. So obviously, everything comes from the outside. So they're all experiences, they're all events, they're all situations that we have been in that affect us, right? That we have an experience with. But then I think we bring our own interpretation to it, right? So somebody cuts you off on the street in the freeway or something. you bring your own interpretation to that based on your experiences. So you're having a bad day, or you've met a lot of mean people, or then you're going to interpret this person that they're evil. They did something terrible to you, right? They meant to you some harm. So we bring the interpretation to all of the events and everything. So I think it is partially external things that come to us, but then they become part of us. And that's when we are able to create stories. That's where we're able to take those outside experiences that have now become internal to us and create a story from them. And I think because we all have a creative spirit, we are all creative, we are able to take sometimes the same thing that has happened to you to different people and create something unique from that, right? Based on ourselves, based on how we interpret things. So we transform reality into a story. And to me, that makes sense that we are able to take experiences, background, all of that to create stories. So I think one of those, so one source is all the external things that have happened that we have internalized and stored and that pop up later. Maybe when we're not thinking about it, when we're not experiencing. So something else triggers a memory, something triggers an event that you have experienced, and then you take that and create a story. So what about then lack of ideas, lack of creativity, lack of being able to come up with the next story? So when that happens, if we agree that sources and ideas come from the external world that then we take and make internal, then it could be that you're just not connecting enough with yourself. It could be that maybe you fear writing about certain things. You don't want to be reminded about certain things. You don't want to re-experience maybe something that was traumatic or just not fun, right? That could be. And therefore, you're not allowing those ideas to actually come out. So it's not that you're blocked so much, so there's no blocking of ideas. It's not that you lack creativity, but it's more that you're not connecting with yourself and the things that you've experienced, the things that you've heard, the emotions that you've had. Because when you allow yourself to do that, that's when those ideas are going to pop up. So if you are feeling like, well, I'm sort of out of ideas, I have nothing to write about, start thinking about experiences that you've had, things that you've endured, ideas, thoughts that you've had, emotions that you've experienced, and see it and write those down and see if you can start coming up maybe with ideas just from that, just from reconnecting with yourself. And one thing to think about too is that ideas change and transform, right? So just because I'm having a thought about writing a dinosaur story because when I'm buying eggs doesn't really mean that that's what I want to write. It might be what I thought at that time, but then maybe once I go home and I sit down, it's like, okay, I'm going to write this dinosaur story. Then I might start thinking, well, that's kind of silly. I don't really want to write a dinosaur story, and I'm not a science fiction writer. So what exactly does this mean? What did this idea mean? Maybe I like the idea of having an animal that is protecting their eggs, let's say. Well, that might transform into like, well, we're animals, we're humans or animals. Maybe I'm trying to write a story about humans protecting their eggs. Maybe I'm trying to write a story about a middle-aged woman who has never gotten married and has never had children and fears that she might not be able to if she waits longer. So maybe it's a story about a woman who decides that she's going to freeze her eggs and then something else happens after that, right? So the idea that you started with transforms into a different story as you start thinking about it, as you start. So don't discard any ideas. So even if they seem like really silly, even if they seem like that is not something that I'm going to write about, I'm never going to write a story about dinosaurs. Okay, good, but what else could it mean? What else could you write? Where is it heading? Why are you thinking this? So ask yourself a lot of questions. Explore really what's going on. Maybe there's a fear in you about that. Maybe there's a fear about just protecting your children. So eggs, children, right? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe you want to write a story about that. So again, don't discard any ideas and just let the magic happen. Let the ideas flow. Don't judge it. Don't say, well, that's dumb. Just kind of go with it. Say, well, this is an interesting thought. What else could I write? What else could it mean? Let it sit for however long, start writing something and see what pops up. This is just another way that actually stories do come to us, is that they don't come fully formed. They may come in sort of an image, or they may come in a weird way like that, right? Of a riding a dinosaur. If somebody said, hey, well, how did you write that really great story about this woman who fertilizes her eggs and then somebody steals them and whatever, you could say, oh well, I was one day buying eggs at the grocery store, I thought of writing a dinosaur story, and this story popped up, and it's exactly what happened, right? It just transformed over time, it changed over time. So pay attention to those thoughts. Don't dismiss any of them. Don't think they're foolish. Write them down. Even if you can't really think of what it could mean today, it might come to you later, but give it some thought. Don't dismiss it immediately. Don't put it aside immediately. Just keep playing with that idea and see what else comes to you. So finally, I want to encourage you not to wait to be inspired. Where is the source of those ideas? So God, the muse, your background, whatever. I'm happy to give all the credit to God and the muse. I totally believe that they're both there. And if they have something to do with the stories that I write, that's awesome. I'll credit them as much as I can. But it's also true, right, that stories do come from you, from the external world, as Rick Rubin says, that has made its way internal, from that inside of you, where you've interpreted all those experiences and you are now able to use them creatively to explain the world, to explain yourself, to explain other things. With stories, we're always saying something, right? So what is it that you're saying about that event, or about those experiences, or about those emotions? It's important for you to tell your story your way, to use your ideas and your imagination to create a story that only you can create. So it would be a shame if you didn't do it, right? Because nobody else has those experiences that you've had. Nobody else has had those emotions. Nobody else can actually tell and transform those stories into something that is uniquely you. So I hope you've enjoyed sort of my thoughts on creativity and the source of ideas. If you did, please hit the like and the share button, and come back and see me next week.